say the Pledge of Allegiance.
And the TV.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, just push it out of the way a little bit. All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we let them know to start recording, or have they already been doing this?
They usually do that whenever we start talking, so Ron's pretty good about that. Okay, welcome everybody to the kickoff of the 2023 budget development process. And I know it's been a long day for a lot of you, so I'll just try to keep it as concise as I possibly can, because I know you don't want to be called late for supper, so so we'll process right through this and try to get to the salient points. The things that we're going to cover today is the Board of Selectmen guidance that was given to the committee, and we'll also talk a little bit about the composition and the charge of the Finance Advisory Committee. Talk a little bit about the budget development process, and then we'll wrap up with the Q&A. And I assume everybody can see that chart over there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's better.
Sorry, Ron.
Okay, so I just wanted to call out that in the recent past, the Board of Selectmen was inundated with the budget development process, and they ran into all kinds of issues that caused the other required processes that they had to be not as efficient as that they would have liked. So they basically thought that it might be better if they put together a Finance and Advisory Committee to intervene in between the Board of Selectmen and the department heads to engage in developing the 2023 budget. So basically what we're doing as a committee is that we're basically put together to gather, organize, and present a budget to the Board of Selectmen. And then, welcome. Now if you can get around those wires, be careful not to trip.
What about today's at the big budget?
And the guidance was to the fact to maintain the current rates using the 2022 as a benchmark going forward. And that was to keep our taxes, the town taxes, capped and to not escalate. I call it, rate creep or whatever. But that was the idea. That was the guidance that they passed on to us. I do know that inflation has been an extreme difficult issue to deal with in this last year, because we've all, both in our businesses and in your departments, in our homes, inflation has just gone skyrocketing. So we're very much cognizant of the inflation issues, and it has ravaged some of those accounting lines. Maybe others, maybe not so much, but some of them definitely. Examples of that would be like fuel. Fuel went through the roof almost twice as much in a matter of a year time. And other selected goods probably were affected as much too. But the other thing that the selectmen wanted to make sure that we took into consideration, whoops, I think I just bumped the wrong one. Yeah. Okay. So, nope, I'm not doing that right. All right, here we go. He didn't want us to compare the town of New Ipswich budget with other towns because he wanted to maintain, the selectmen wanted to maintain their own independence and keep it capped and in control. So, what we're doing now is we're taking a look at not only the baseline 2022 as a baseline budget, but we're also looking at the inflation. It's recognized, but in terms of developing your budget, we ask that you not put inflated numbers into your accounting lines. there's a reason for that. It will be addressed, but not at the department level. We're going to be working that at the committee and selectman level. And then we'll take those new numbers, whatever it inflates to, and run that back to the departments to staff that back with you so you see what those new numbers are. And then the charter that the selectmen asked the committee was to provide frequent updates on the budget development to make sure that they are aware of what's going on. If there's any issues that they need to be made aware of or intervene in, but we wanted to make sure that they were kept in the loop for any and all issues going forward. The other thing was that we were going to exclude, we talked about this a moment ago, excluding the bonds in the warrants because that's a different process separate from the budget development, and we'll be working that with the town outside of this budget process. Okay. Well, because of all the issues of trying to integrate a budget process with the other town selectmen requirements, they came up with the idea of putting together a finance and advisory committee. And it is comprised of 4 able, very qualified people. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dennis Howe. We've got Joe Woodworth here, and we've got Mitch Gluck. He's over on the end of the table. And we have Luke Moran. He's on the corner of the table. And I will tell you that I was very, very pleased whenever the selectmen identified these 4 people, because what I found in them was a lot of experience. They've got a lot of budget experience, not only in private businesses, but in government business as well. And it ranges from, completely having a thorough education or indoctrination of running a private business. So they're all very much aware of how important in developing a budget is. So I've been very pleased working with them. We've had several meetings already, and we've had a lot of really good ideas that I think that will be helpful. So one thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody understood, and maybe some of you are old hats and have been around for many, many years, and we're very much aware of some of the rough bumps that we've had in the past with finance advisory committees or finance committees or whatever, but I just wanted to make everybody know and understand that we're here to help and not to impede or not to create problems or running interference for any of your budget developments, because whenever we collect your information, we want to make sure that we get your full budget requirements. I mean, all of it, whatever it is. So, but one thing that is important for all of the committee members is that you, the department heads, help educate all of us, since we're brand new and we've not done this before. Educate us on your requirements, and that's very, very important, because many times we might be called offline by the selectmen, and they may want to know something, and we would like to give them the answer rather than going back and forth. And I think you can all understand the benefits of doing it that way.
I got it, sign it. Do I sign it?
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
She thought I was.
That,
I got a pen.
so the members of the Finance Advisory Committee were charged to collect, review, and present the requirements to the Board of Selectmen when needed, or as required, to keep them up to date. And also to support you, the department heads, during the deliberations. Now, I understand that's starting in February, and I think the town vote occurs in March. But then we also work as an interface between the departments and the Board of Selectmen to make sure that they have the information, and you're not always being tackled for ankle biter issues having to do with the budget. And then last but not least, we're charged with taking your input and collecting that into a master spreadsheet file so that it can be consolidated, and in the end run, it basically is a readout of the total town requirement. And we've already started work on that. The committee members do have that Excel file. Oh, we also recognize that some of you may be extremely well versed in working with Excel. Some of you may not. That's okay, because all of the committee members are ready to dive in and extract that information, put it into the Excel file as needed, and move forward based on your inputs to them.
Sorry.
That's all right, Susan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So, what the FAC will provide to you, and many of you may have already received a couple of files. One was a file that actually combined 2020, 2021, and 2022. Now, the first 2 years, 20 and 21, had budget and actuals, but the last year, it was kind of an incomplete, we're still in the middle of it, it's not complete yet. So it's only the budget numbers that was submitted for the 2022 budget, but you should have that also. The second file was a file that was provided to us by the town administrator, which is essentially all of the current lines of accounting with numbers in them for those to be filled out. And basically building each of those lines for your total requirement. So that's those are the files that you should have already. If not, you need to check with your committee member, and they'll work with you to get you those files. Another new feature going forward in 2023 is we're looking to initiate a budget execution review, which would be done quarterly. And what we mean by that is this is simply a way for us to get a heads up for any under execution or over execution that's occurring in any of the lines, so that the selectmen can be aware of that and mitigate those issues earlier rather than at the last run of the year, which can also be a big catastrophe if it's not those issues aren't aware or learned early on before they actually become a big problem. So this also helps to ensure that we're doing a good distribution of the limited resources that we have across the town. Now, some of you may ask, well, what if I run over budget? Or, what then? Well, everybody's experienced that before. I mean, circumstances have created situations where budgets were, blown. Simply, I use the example of the fuel issue last year. I'm sure that was not expected at the beginning of the year when the budget was being built, but it happened. So those things occur. There are safety valves in the budget to preclude those kinds of issues, or mitigate those kinds of issues, not preclude, but mitigate those kinds of issues. Other issues could be extra snow plowing that we've had. That I remember Peter saying that one year he had like hundreds of thousands of dollars over the budget, and it just couldn't be helped because it was a very icy, snowy winter. So those kinds of things come up. We're aware of that. We want to make sure that we are sensitive to that, and we do want to work with you all the way through the year. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the budget development process. In this process, one thing that I want, and I mentioned, some of you may be very adapted or very skilled at working with Excel, and that's great. Some of you may not, but whatever your method of building your budgets in the past is fine. We're not looking to change that. If it's just writing out the notes on a piece of paper, that's good. If you're good with Excel or spreadsheets or putting it in a tabular fashion, that's fine too. We can take it any way that you're very comfortable with building the budget. And then we'll take that and transcribe it, put it into the town budget for consolidation. Sir,
Are you aware that?
state your name, please.
Okay, James Coffey, are you aware that the town's accounting system has a budget module?
A bunch of what?
Module in it.
Budget module.
In other
Yes.
words, you don't need, I mean, if you wanna do a spreadsheet, that's fine, I know how to do that. But there is a whole budget module in the accounting system to do a whole budget. And you can't really finish the budget until you have a balance sheet from December 31st, 2022.
Right.
And you don't have that yet.
No, and we won't until the end of the year.
The third thing I was thinking about listening to you, and I'm glad you're doing this. This is organization which we sorely need, but some of these budgets are really small.
We understand that, and we've seen that.
Like trustees of trust funds, we can knock that one out in no time at all. Just don't change it and keep on going.
Right.
Yeah, and the assessors are somewhat close to that, but in the case of the assessors, we get tangled up with a warrant article because selectmen years ago decided to have us putting in a warrant article to put money away for finishing a reval, and every year they took money out from what they put in the prior year. It was nuts, but that's okay.
Okay.
We can address that when we come to it.
In discussions with Debbie, I was aware that they had a budget report that they put out, and actually that became the essence of the second file that we sent to everybody, or everybody should have. If they don't have, we'll get it to you. But when you say a module, I have not seen that or have not seen it operate.
That's what I emailed to you. That,
Okay, that was the file that I passed on to
I've
everybody.
used it for 20
you
plus years.
changed it to an Excel spreadsheet, but when the original one that I sent you
Yeah,
was in the format of the BMSI budget.
okay,
The DOS reports.
Yes, the DOS reports.
okay. Oh,
But
lovely.
the issue's
Yeah.
gonna be is that none of us have
Yeah.
access to the system, so for us to give you budgetary information, we just give it to you in Excel, and you can convert it into DOS and move it over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We don't have to leverage it, it
yeah,
can be done in the back end.
yeah.
yeah.
You either
Yeah,
should have.
the other thing that I remember DOS being the kingpin software back in 1980.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's
78.
that's the bridge we have to cross.
Yeah, exactly.
But it will work. And it works very easily. I spent 20 years using it.
It's an ASCII.
And I did
computer,
towns. I
it's
was
not
the sole
hard.
budget committee.
It should've
Yeah,
worked.
So-
Debbie,
Right?
Jim's got a good point. I guess we need to talk, what things maybe we need to fill the gap.
Your
On.
Excel is fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
It'll convert it in.
if I can add something, I've met with a number of the departments that I'm working with. Some of the individuals that I've met with who have been tremendous actually to work with, all of them. And some are very experienced, as Dennis has said, with Excel, and they're putting their numbers into Excel. Some not as experienced, and so I'm bringing my laptop to our meetings, and we're going over the numbers, and I'm actually inputting the numbers for those individuals as they sit with me and we talk about it, so that we can get it into the format that we have committed to the selectmen to put it in. So whatever works the easiest for any of you, that's what we will accommodate.
Agreed.
And no one has access to the BMSI, so no one's gonna, you guys do your spreadsheets,
Okay.
and then,
Well, one thing that they definitely have access to is 4 committee members that are armed with this
Exactly.
software
yep,
that we can transcribe with their overwatch
Yep.
of what we're putting in there. And then we'll get it into, well, what we're getting to is the bottom line number.
right.
That's what we're trying to get to. Okay. The second point I wanted to bring up is that many of the On the second file that I was talking to you about, the 2023 budget format, was the accounting lines. And what you saw on that was just simply one single line. And if it was a roll up, it would be one large number. And somebody reading that line, that single line, wouldn't know what's in there. So what we've designed to do in this Excel spreadsheet is to take that same accounting number, account name, and we'll replicate it however many lines that we need so that we can identify what the total requirement is that consolidates to that one number. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a contract line, and let's say that contract normally is about $25,000. That's all well and good. If you see that one line, you can't really describe what those contracts are. But those contracts may be comprised of 3 or 4 different contracts. Let's say on that contract line, we're going to put $25,000, but we don't know what's built into that. So we would create 3 lines identifying the first contract, the second contract, and the third contract. Let's say the first and second is $10,000 and the last one's $5,000. It sums to $25,000. You still have your whole number, and yet we also have the identification of each of the contracts that comprises your total requirement. And that's why it's important that we need to know what the details are in those lines. So that's the reason why we say it's important that we do multiple lines, as many as necessary. You only may need one. Supplies, pencils, papers. I don't think anybody's going to want to count the reams of papers, or the papers, pencils, and
Be
paper
surprised
clips.
at what's been asked in past financial budgetary requests.
We'll kind of know if it's a little over the top or not. So those kinds of things. That's not that big of an issue. It's the big ticket items that are going to get us in trouble if we can't articulate it. Jim.
And I'm not trying to promote one guy's software, but you can do that with the BSI budget module, or just how you run the daily report when you get done putting it in. There's a way to do it. You can do all of that. And not only that, when you run a report, if you put things in that way, when you report on expenses, you'll see all those different lines. You can do it.
I can give my 2 cents. I've seen the software. The problem is not going to be the software, Jim. It's going to be the fact that people do not have readily available access outside of within the building. Excel is something that can be done at any location, and BMI just imports the data. As long as you stay with the same column headers of your spreadsheet that match the
No,
tables.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use Excel.
They don't have access to BMSI, that's the whole point.
That's
Like, I'm gonna be entering it into.
there's literally, I think, 4 people right now. Well, you guys might be right now.
There's 4
You're
4
supposed to be
inputers.
outside this year anyway.
Yes, we are.
So I guess my comments are mainly, let's use it the best way we can to save labor.
Right.
Well, Jim, having done budgets for private companies, government, Department of Defense, Excel is a great bridge to just about
I
any
love
software.
Excel. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. There is a difference between private accounting and government accounting.
I understand that.
Okay.
Trust
There's
me.
a difference in the laws.
Yeah.
That way you can and cannot do. I mean, if the pool gets a whole bunch of people dropping money down there, they can't overrun their budget with that money unless they go through a real process.
Okay.
Jim, they don't have access though,
Yeah.
that's.
I know they don't have access.
Nobody does.
Okay. Let me move on to the next line. If there's any other discussion, can we save that and discuss? Okay. The next thing that I wanted to address is not only do you have all these 1 to, 2, 20, 40, 100, 150 lines of whatever, one of the things for us that will help us understand what the priorities are is to prioritize each of those lines. And we've come up with an algorithm that helps us identify what are the most important items, those absolutely critical items that must be funded such as if you can't run a police department without people, I'd say that the salaries might be pretty critical. So we're using a 1, 2, and 3 prioritization system. 1 being the critical, 2 being the standard, I need this to run the routinized business of the year in your department. And number 3 being those planning items or those items that may not be as critical as 1 and 2, but we need to have some kind of measure of identifying what items are most to least important. So each of those lines should be identified with a 1, 2, or 3. We went over this back and forth several times trying to figuring out what the best prioritization system to use, and this is the one we felt like would, give us the biggest bang for the buck. Sir?
Can I ask, questions on the priority, 1, 2, and 3?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we include the risk matrix that goes behind it, that if 1, 2, or 3 on what the budget line is, if it's not approved or in line, what does it mean? For instance, his money on
Mhm.
the salary.
Mm-hmm.
That means if you don't approve it at this level, what the implementation is.
Yeah, if it's not approved, then it probably wouldn't be a 1. It probably wouldn't even be a 2. It might even be a 3, if that's what I understand your question.
No, my question is do you want from us stating that if we don't get this line? So I categorize 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
If you say no to item that's a number 2, what does that mean?
Okay.
What is, for every action there's a reaction. What is the
Yeah,
reaction
yes.
effect by not allowing
I'm-
that in?
I am so glad you brought that up, which leads me into, actually it's the last item, but I'll jump to the
The
bottom.
textual description.
Yes. All right, you see where I'm going with
I
that?
don't got my glasses. I'll
Okay,
take your word
what
for
it says is provide a textual description of the requirement
It is.
that amplifies what the detail is for that. It's free form, it's, I don't know, like 250 characters on a cell, I don't know what but it's a lot. And you can articulate those kinds of issues so that it's understood not only by the committee member, but the Board of Selectmen when they see this in the end run. Okay? Great.
So if it's a 1, it's really a no-brainer. So you can talk to that. We don't need a lot of backup on that. I mean, if you say, no, we need it. It's salary, it's a 1. This officer, 1. You don't really need a lot of backup for that. But certainly 2 and 3, it'd be good to have some explanation as to why we want it, why it'd be a good thing.
Have you guys seen what was submitted last year for the budgetary process?
Have
Hey,
not.
did you see like the proposals that were done by the department heads defining what their requests were?
We have not.
We've
Well,
only seen the numbers.
Well,
We've seen the numbers, but
yeah.
we haven't seen the description or the impact. The other
Is there
thing,
any chance that we could get that to them?
I haven't seen it.
Well, so for example, Mike shared the budget proposal for last year and the budget completed. So I've gone through all that, and Mike did a great job of saying for computer supplies, for example, we have this many computers. It's on a rotation schedule. We have this textual summary. We've seen what was submitted last year.
Yeah, because you
So
did
I
a
think that was
PowerPoint
great.
from here, what was it, this is before, that said, here's each line item and why we need each line item.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna speak for you, Gary.
We do the same thing, we have a
Probably do the same
PowerPoint
thing.
and we break down each line item, what's inside each line item and what it costs.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
we're gonna
what
do
I'm
that
talking
again because that breaks down everything
Yes.
you guys need.
Yes.
It allows you to read it and see it and
Yeah.
try to put
Yeah.
something to it.
And we can leverage that. For example, I moved a lot of that stuff that Mike had provided me right into Excel, and that's fine. And we've got a lot of backup for it. So, yeah, what have we done last year? We don't want to break anything.
Yeah.
We may help you. We may ask a few questions as to why or do we need this, or maybe even in some cases is that enough?
Yeah, I think it's also important to emphasize that if we ask questions about why something is needed or what are the consequences if you prioritize something as a 2 or 3, we're not asking you to defend it to us. We're asking you strictly so that we can gather the information that you have and that we can put it into the report. So we're actually helping to do the legwork for you. So I don't want you to feel defensive or that we're judging whether or not you need it. you are the experts in your department and what your needs are. We are not, we're just wanting to collect the information so that we can consolidate it all. Such as Matt had said that in his department, they did that last year and put it into a PowerPoint, which is fantastic. We wanna take that information and put it directly into the Excel sheet.
Yep,
And
well
so
said.
that's what our role is gonna be.
So the answer is if we just give you an Excel spreadsheet with the PowerPoint with the descriptions, we're good.
With the
Well,
PowerPoint?
I think I have to, I think.
Well, we have to present it.
whatever works for you,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
yeah, if the.
You need a
description-
description on the other end that matches, I got you.
Yeah, and another way to call that description cell and call it an impact statement. What's the impact if it doesn't get funded?
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to drive at.
Yeah, okay. Just impact, colon, da-da-da-da-da. This happens or that doesn't happen. Do you wanna accept this risk or not? That's what a budget development is all about. Articulating what the requirement is so that everybody understands. Okay, the one that I jumped over, I do wanna talk about that because that's important. And that is for each of the lines, there is some level of susceptibility to inflation or cost of living adjustment. Now, the way we've defined it, and everybody may have their own different definition, but for me, an inflation is a cost of goods that was inflated because of a cost growth from one year to the next. Cost of living adjustment is linked or directly related to salaries. And quite honestly, we've talked about that, we're very much aware of that. We don't have the answers yet. We don't want you to put any inflated numbers in there, but it will be addressed. And those numbers will come back to you, so you'll see what those new numbers are whenever we get them. And that's something that the Board of Selectmen have to come to some level of detail on so that we can apply those numbers to it. Okay.
I'm not sure I understand. So I can already predict a certain amount of inflation due to the bills that I've been getting. So you're asking me to forward my 2022 budget flat?
Send it to us flat, and I failed to
Without-
mention one other thing.
Mike.
Mike, that's right. For each of the lines, there is a drop-down box that the 4 committee members will identify each of those lines as either being susceptible to inflation, which could be gas, and you'd mark it inflationary. Another item might be salaries. Well, all of those would be salaries unless it's a fixed, stipend or whatever that was already agreed to. But for salaries, you would earmark those as COLA, C-O-L-A. So, and then for all the others, it's NA. Now, what's an NA? You have a contract that you've already signed an agreement to for 2 years that you're going to get services for this period, this price, fixed price contract, whatever. That wouldn't be susceptible to inflation. So you'd put that down as NA. So what will we do with this when we get it together? We can take all these lines, we can separate out all of the COLA issues, and we can apply whatever COLA factor that is to it. Same thing for inflation, or if it's NA, not applicable, it's just disregarded. Those numbers just go in the way it goes in because it's a fixed price contract, as an example.
When we, in meeting with the selectmen, when we get.
Mitch, did I answer your question?
Sort of. I'm just, as a department head, we're always projecting for the next year. And part of my projection is, I've already reviewed, my spreadsheets of my bills and my tallies for 2022 to date. I can clearly see the trajectory of inflation in a lot of these line items. So it's hard for me to submit a flat budget knowing that that's my budget and I'm responsible for the projection. So you can see I'm a little hesitant, and I might have further questions on
Right.
this.
So I think, for example, the server, the 2022 budget said 4,500.
Right.
It was 6,000.
Sure.
So I would say that for the budget planning, we're using 6,000 for 2023, and it's also gonna be subject to inflation, because if we buy that, another one, for example, well, we're not going, but if we were to buy another one, it'd be even higher rate than what we're planning for, cause of inflation.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think I
think-
can get a lot of these questions answered offline, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of information.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Your question may apply to somebody else, so we'll,
Yeah.
that's good.
And certainly,
And we have to work closely together, cause things, obviously, like, there's not gonna be a fixed inflation rate for computer supplies
right,
versus gasoline,
sure.
so,
Yeah, they're all dynamic, so.
yeah, so we can work through that, we're gonna do our best to to help you come up with the right numbers, and
And
things,
then we'll put that in the narrative, so if you have, for instance, hypothetically, if you have multiple lines that are susceptible to inflationary numbers, but they all differ, we will put that in the description, so that when the numbers are calculated, we will take into account what you've projected. We will not be finalizing that, we'll just be putting in the spread, then we'll be coming back to you and to all of the department heads, showing you what the numbers are with the inflationary numbers and getting your input. Does this work? Are you okay with this? Is this what you think it should be? So there will be multiple discussions and drafts.
Okay.
gasoline is another good example where, I think the price as of the 9th was $3.82. So when we itemize fuel expenses, we should all be using the same number, so we'll take that, we'll all come back and we'll say, okay, fuel, and then with the Board of Selectmen come up with what do we think the price is gonna be, because it's all over the place right now, so.
Yeah,
And
I
we
mean,
can't
it's
stop
high.
it.
It's up, it's down.
I just
it's,
got my budget for today, I'm at 8,400, I was budgeted for $9,000, I got 4 months left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna be over in
You
that.
can see, and the same with the electricity. My bill last month was $322, this month was $650,
Yeah, double, yeah.
so,
That's ugly.
yeah. So that's why I'm projected right now, like, I'm already in my budget typing,
Yeah.
Okay, for the department heads, I've got some good news. You don't have to put in the inflation values, you don't have to put in the cost of living, and you don't have to put in Medicare or FICA, because that's gonna be done centrally. It's simply an algorithm based on the kind of salary that each employee gets at a certain percentage rate for those given kind of salaries or stipends. So we'll plug those numbers in. Again, we'll show those to you. Debbie?
Does that also include New Hampshire retirement for the people who get that? Do you have that in your algorithm?
That's a mathematical calculation as well.
Yeah, it has to
Yeah.
be, yeah, because it's 0.0625 on one and 0.00 whatever. So
I think
whatever
it's like
the-
33 and
So
14,
if it's-
33% for,
You have the
33
FICA,
change.
the
Yeah.
Medicare,
Yes,
the New
yes,
Hampshire
yes.
retirement,
Yeah.
those are all gonna be calculated by
Roger
you guys.
gave that to us, and he gave
Okay.
us the different kinds of salaries that were Medicare charged or Medicare and FICA charged or vice versa.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir, Bob.
Yes, if we had a line item that was $500, and we say we need 1,000, you want that 1,000 to be in $2022, not 2023, that kind of thing.
That's correct, that's
Okay.
correct.
So we have to go back and recalculate it based on last year's,
Yes,
okay,
yes, sir.
I got it.
Again, we recognize that inflation is definitely a factor that we have to deal with. Same thing for
Are
COLA, but we just
Sorry.
wanna make sure that. One of the reasons why we're doing this, Bob, is because we wanna put everybody on the same level playing field. Let's say you have an interpretation of inflation, Mike has a different interpretation of inflation, Jim has another interpretation of inflation, and I get numbers all over the place and I've lost control. And I can't articulate it. But if we have the baseline, then we address what the inflation and the COLA values are, then we can be able to clearly articulate what we're ramping it up to from.
Is there any chance as you move forward then, just taking, because you have access to the budget lines for all of our departments, turning around and tagging which ones are considered inflationary lines?
Yes, remember that's where I was talking about.
Salary,
Each of those lines
fuel,
have,
electric, not on the budget, I'm saying what we have right now on our lines. So we already get the output, so we're all operating from the same thing.
Yes.
Because from what you just said, I look at it from the perspective of, if I need a piece of equipment,
Mhm.
and I know that a piece of equipment costs me 2,000 now,
Mhm.
but I've watched it go from 1,200 to 1,400 to 2,000. You have no idea what that inflationary rate is on the piece of equipment.
So you need to tell us that it's $2,000 price today, and then we need to figure out whether we're gonna inflate that throughout the year if we need to. So that's how we have to.
Why would you be doing it when we're the experts on
You're
the
the
equipment we
expert.
buy?
No, exactly, we need your, I don't care about the $1,200 price, cause that doesn't affect us at all, but if it's $2,000 today, and it's been growing quite a bit, we need to know that, say, okay, this is gonna be subject to inflation, so, these are dialogue, the conversations you have with your
Okay.
committee member.
So
And
where
we
normally I would have
gotta-
came back and said it's gonna be 2,600 because we're gonna
There-
take a ballpark on where it
there-
sits.
yeah.
It sounds like there's a nuance, I don't know if it's applicable to everybody or not, but in this particular case, again, the description may be a good way to articulate, this is not a normal inflatable item, and, you know,
Just
describe
for
it
instance,
that way.
Eric, when I'm meeting with you, let's say you bring up a piece of equipment, I will be asking you, do you perceive that to be subject to the possibility of inflation? And you will tell me, and I will build that into the narrative, and if you have a sense of even what that inflationary number might be, I will build that into the narrative as well.
Okay.
But I will depend on your expertise to give me that information.
I got you. We're just gonna give you the data rather than us put it out and present it. We'll just give you the fact that I see
Mhm.
this go this much. Works for me.
Okay.
Less typing on my part.
Okay, let's see. What did I miss? I guess I got it all in there. Okay. All right. And continuation slide for budget development. What we're gonna do, and I think we talked about this, we're gonna translate that budget into our template, which in turn will be something that we would present, not only show to you, but present to the selectmen as well. Again, when we're talking about the multiple lines, we can consolidate that in our Excel spreadsheet to one number. Doesn't matter if you've got one line or 20 lines of the same accounting number, it will consolidate it into a single number and become that budget submit. And then again, reemphasizing using multiple lines as you need it. Okay, any questions on that? Okay.
Real quick, what do you do with debt? Are you looking at that separately?
Looking at what, Jim?
Like, I bought a bucket load on, so much down and so much a year, okay, for 4 years or something like that, or what's remaining on the landfill closure. So, I mean, you're including debt in the,
Okay, landfill,
I meant debt in general, I mean, I don't need an
The
exact.
cap, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The,
let me get to that in just a minute, Jim, I think that may answer your question. And that's the next one, the next slide. What we've been asked to exclude from the budget are those items there, one of which is landfill cap testing. Is that what you're talking about, Jim?
Yeah, sanitation, hazardous waste, regional
Yeah.
associations,
Yeah.
landfill cap testing, those are all required, you have to do,
Yes,
okay?
it's
But
not that they're
is not-
ignored.
But there's not debt, I don't see debt in there,
You said debt?
debt, DEBT, I owe you some money.
Yeah, that's not one of the accounting lines that was provided to us, but you raise a good point, and is that may be part of the warrants and the trusts that we're dealing with offline? Debbie, can you address that or not?
So a lot of those up there are, well, the hazardous waste is a warrant. The outdoor lighting was the LED thing, it was a one-time thing.
Right,
The regional associations, those would be in the budgets. Those are all in each department's budget. Like the
All right,
Town Clerk
we-
Association, NHMA, like, they're all in different budgets.
Okay, we can put that back in, I
Yeah.
just,
There's little squirrely things that you can't take out, like the Town Clerk Association
Right.
or the Assessors Association. You can't take them out. We gotta belong to the club. They won't.
well, one thing you can certainly be accounting on for us, Jim, is that we're very flexible,
Okay,
we'll
no,
work
I
with that.
understand.
Yeah,
Okay? Alright, you got that.
yeah, I get that.
Okay, any questions on the excluded items? And I did mention the Medicare and FAC, it's not that we're ignoring it, it's just that you don't have to put it in there.
We don't have
It's
to.
a big
Right.
item.
Okay, now, probably the most important thing that you wanna focus in on, and I'm not gonna read each and every one of them unless there are questions, but this is our tentative milestone chart that we came up with to get us to the point where we can deliver a product to the town so that it can be submitted to state and it becomes the prep and the background, the backbone of what we put together on deliberations and then eventually to a town vote in March. So this is what we're looking at. Many of you have already been called or emailed or whatever and probably have already made contact, like Jim and I met a couple weeks ago, where we talked about, getting to know each other and understanding where we're coming from and where we can help or where we can't help, or if we can't help, we'll find help, that kind of stuff. Then what we're looking at is on October the 4th, we're trying to hopefully get a position from each of the departments where I call it a pre-budget or whatever you want to, pre-inflation budget, the baseline budget, and we'll start assembling the data. And from there we start building it. Sometime in October, hopefully by the end of October, we'll have a review of the documents and consolidate that into a complete Finance Advisory Committee workbook. Then by November the 7th, we'll put together draft budgets for the selectmen to review. They may be asking questions all along the way, but this is really the first time where they actually start taking a look at it and seeing what's built into each of those lines. And then we'll do the budget updates, narrative justifications, do the cleanup work, and hopefully whenever we finish with that, we'll have a very defendable budget. The only thing that I ask, that all the committee members would ask of you is, be honest with us, we'll be honest with you. And we will support you in whatever way that we can to articulate that to the selectmen. I know they're very interested in it. They want to make sure you have what you need. Jim, you've got another question.
I got a quick question. Okay. Are you familiar with the state portals that have to be inputted?
State portals.
That's my job.
The budget needs to go into a state portal in the correct format.
Okay, let me, I appreciate your comments, Jim.
I don't want
No,
to
no,
do
no.
anything with it. I just want you to know that it exists. That's all.
Remember, yes, and I will also tell you that all four of us are attending a class on the 20th at State to get beefed up on all the things you're bringing up now.
Okay.
So, again, we're all new. We're getting educated off of the department heads, and hopefully, if we can impart some information to you, it would be a help to you too. But we're supposedly getting educated, anointed on the 20th of September. Okay.
Good luck. Huh?
Yes, thank you. And then on December the 14th, now these are arbitrary. If we're moving along quickly, that's fine. But by the middle of December, we want to hand that off to the selectmen for their final review and approval. And then we move into that, after that in February for the deliberative session there to come to a consensus, then eventually in March for the town vote. Yes, sir, back in the back.
Bob Rumrell.
Hi, Bob.
So, actually, there's a review of the warrant in January, so the budget needs to be a warrant article that gets reviewed at that point in time.
Is that inputted separately? Debbie, the warrant articles?
So, the budget is one of the warrant articles.
Okay,
It's-
I got
it's
you,
its
I got
own-
you.
It's warrant article number 1, always.
Okay.
So Bob, can you repeat, what you just said about January?
So January was when the,
So 30 days before the deliberative session, the warrant has to be reviewed
Okay.
in an open hearing, along with all the other warrant articles, that'll be presented. So but you wanna know there's a January date that comes a month
Okay.
earlier than
Oh,
February.
yeah, the budget.
maybe we need to include
Yeah.
that in our, maybe we'll
Yep.
update this
Yeah.
thing
You
too.
need a Form
Budget
MS,
hearing.
Thank you for that, Bob,
Thank you,
appreciate it,
Bob.
we'll put that
MS
in.
226 filled out. That's what you need.
Yeah, so the budget hearing is in January, and then the deliberative in February, and
But
then the vote in March.
The budget hearing includes all the warrant articles and, you know, the whole shopping list.
Okay. Good to know.
But we don't vote at that session, that's.
No,
that's
no, I
open
understand.
discussion.
I understand
That's a
that's in
budget
March,
hearing.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
not budget hearing,
right,
and after the budget hearing, the selectmen can't change the budget unless they have another hearing.
right, okay,
So they're locked in.
okay.
So they should be able to help you at the state level with that.
So I think what we've done is we've moved into the next chart and Bob's hand popped up. Questions?
Just to confirm, in previous iterations of the Budget Committee and the Financial Advisory Committee, the committees and the boards have met with both the Advisory Committee and with the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
Is that gonna change?
Yes,
Did I hear a yes back there?
yeah.
Well,
Well,
I'm not sure I understood the question, Bob,
I'll
but,
repeat it for you.
okay,
Clarify it. In previous years, we met with both the Financial Advisory of the Budget Committee and the Selectmen to discuss our budget.
gotcha, okay.
Usually at the same time, it
Yes.
was all at the same meeting.
No, well, no, in previous years it was at separate meetings.
We
Maybe
did,
last year it was at the same meeting, but previous
Okay.
years it was separate.
it's always been the FAC, then afterwards, once it's approved, it goes
Yeah.
to the board.
Yeah, my interpretation on that, Bob, is, as it was described over here, was the input goes into the Finance Advisory Committee, and that's a collective, collaborative effort between the department heads and the Finance Advisory Committee. Then the Finance Advisory Committee takes that input and provides it to the selectmen for review and eventually approval. And then it gets approved, and all the while, that information is flowing up and down both ways. So
Is it 3-level or 2-level?
it's three, well, if you include the department heads, it's 3,
Okay.
yeah,
So to be clear, we don't approve your budgets.
that's right, no,
We help you create them, we understand them.
good point,
And then together, I mean, really, we may send an email or hand a piece of paper, but it's us that's passing that on. So yeah, I agree with this. This is their budget. But when we meet with you, I'm not going to say, yeah, you're not getting that, and cross it off the list. Not at all. We're here to understand what your needs are and just make sure that we're all on the same page, so that when we go to the Board of Selectmen, we can say, yeah, we understand it, that we've gone through in detail. Here's how it works. They may push back. If they push back, we work with you as a team. Of course, we're not,
So there's no interaction between the department heads and the Board of Selectmen directly?
Well,
They may have some specific questions that they might need to go to you to have answered, and there's no bar or there's no barrier for them to do that,
Can we
so,
go to the meetings that you guys go to?
absolutely,
public meetings, absolutely.
yeah.
Alright.
As a matter of fact, we were feeling kinda lonely for the first couple of meetings we had, nobody showed up.
Might just be easier
Yeah.
instead of going back and forth, that if they have questions, we can be there to help answer them.
Right,
Because I know
and
they usually do for us.
That would be great.
And I think that from the selectmen's point of view, and I'm not gonna speak for them, but I thought I understood that they were also wanting to, one at a time, maybe step into the meetings and listen in just to get caught up and see what's happening at that particular time. So like I said, it's a collaborative effort, Bob, collaborative effort. We're not directing, we're not deciding, we're not cutting the lines off. We are a conduit to get your information to the selectmen.
Well, I guess the real question is, who can be the better advocate for our budget? The department heads or the budget
Well,
financial
you know,
advisory?
that's a good point. If you have a real tough issue, it might be that if there's some discussion that you might come up with the committee and provide additional backup. There's nothing to preclude that.
And
That
there's
I know
nothing
of.
to say that if as the department heads, if you wanna meet with the board of selectmen, you can. It's not, we're not saying, we're just trying to make the whole process not as,
Trying to streamline it.
yeah.
Yes,
as painful
and that's
as
kind of
that.
what I was saying at the beginning,
Yeah.
you know, in years at least one year that I know of, they just got totally immersed in budget, and couldn't get anything else started. They were feeling like they couldn't get other stuff done. So they created this organization to help them.
Okay, thank you.
But by all means,
And,
like I said,
and
if you
Dennis,
want-
you may wanna speak to the, at the deliberative session in February, the, Board of Selectmen would like the department heads,
Good point, Mitch. Go ahead,
All right.
spew that out, yeah, good
kind of
point.
in conjunction with what you were just discussing, the selectmen have informed us that in past years, the department heads, when attending the deliberative session, that you've sat in the audience with other constituents in town, what they would like is for all the department heads to be up on stage with us. And so that if there is a question that a constituent has about your particular department, that both you and I, for instance, for those departments I'm with, we will be there to answer their questions. To be able to explain a particular line item or a particular cost. And so again, our role will be to help advocate, if you're needing our assistance, to help advocate for what your budget has.
And the board wants to be more transparent this year than in the past. They wanna explain, if there's things that are strange or different or whatever in this budget this year, you know, for 2023, like we're getting new software for this, and explain why, to streamline things or whatever. So I think the deliberative might be a little longer, because they're gonna do a presentation.
Mhm.
It's not just here's the numbers
Right.
and have a nice night.
Right.
So if anybody has any questions, then the finance committee, the department heads, like everybody's there to answer the questions, if there are any.
Yeah.
Now, I'm somewhat new to New Ipswich. I did attend the deliberative session last year, and as I understand in talking with the selectmen about how they'd like that format to go this year, they also said that they felt that you all should deserve a lot more credit for actually running the department, being responsible for the numbers, knowing what's in your budget and so forth. And they did not want it to come across as though they are the ones with the expertise about that, so they want you to also be up on stage to get that recognition. So if you get a question, and if you speak to your specific budget, that you will be recognized as the expert.
Exactly. Well put, Mitch, thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Any other questions?
The assessors meeting in 1 minute I have to go to, so. I'm gonna get up and leave, but it's not because.
That's okay, Jim, you've earned it.
Jim, you and I are getting together this week, so I'm sure there'll be more to talk about.
We did a whole budget in 10 minutes.
I was counting on
I don't mean to be flippant about it, but some budgets are so small.
No, I understand. And trust me, I appreciate that. But yeah, but
It's like triage.
I think we're getting
Take care
together
of certain
on
ones and
Wednesday.
give it the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting. Oh, all right.
How do we
Bob?
find who we're assigned to?
Yeah.
Joe Woodworth, I'm the guy.
Do you have all the election stuff?
Yes.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I just wanted to point, don't forget to vote tomorrow. It's important.
Early enough.
Early and
Early
often.
enough.
Chicago way.
Once is enough, be as dry as you can.
Do you know who,
Okay.
is responsible for Conservation Commission?
It's okay,
I
Bill.
do right off the top of my head, I don't.
Yeah, you don't have to, he had no idea.
Yeah, we'll,
so
we'll
he's
look that
just
up
curious.
after the meeting. Okay,
Mr. Woodward, are you related to Fred Woodward from Antrim? Who died at about age 99 a couple of years ago?
No,
He was my
Like-
high school gym teacher in White Plains, New York. I'm 83.
alright, I guess we're adjourned, guys.
Thank you all.
I understand, that's okay.